The Israeli army bombed Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, twice on Sunday, November 17th, leaving at least 2 people killed and 13 wounded. U.S. President Joe Biden authorized Ukraine to use Washington-supplied long-range missiles to attack Russian territory. And Uruguay presidential candidates participate in the debate prior to the presidential runoff next Sunday, November 24th. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The Israeli army bombed Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, twice on Sunday, leaving at least 4 people killed and 22 wounded. According to Lebanese security sources, no center or institutions affiliated with Hamas or Hezbollah was located in the area of the strike. In this context, firefighting crews worked to extinguish the flames caused by the attack on the Mar Elias district, a commercial and residential area. This is the first attack since October 8, 2023, against this area in the Lebanese capital. Likewise, the Lebanese Ministry of Education announced the closure of schools as a security measure. Strikes were also reported in the region of Tyre in the south of Lebanon, which left 11 people dead and 48 wounded. Meanwhile, the Israeli regime continues its expansionist policies at the cost of land grabbing and destruction of Palestinian homes in the occupied West Bank. On Monday morning, bulldozers of the occupying forces demolished several buildings in Rafah town, northwest of Jerusalem. Local sources reported that the Israeli troops demolished a garden, a hut, 2 football fields, and a photo studio in the Beit Zurik area. In addition to these actions, the constant harassment by the Zionist forces and settlers seek to advance in the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and to expand illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. And the Lebanese George Ibrahim Abdallah, who has been detained in France for more than 40 years, will still have to wait several weeks to know if his release, or the last November 15th by the Court of Execution of Anti-Terrorist Penalties, will finally be effective. The decision was immediately appealed by the National Anti-Terrorist Prosecutor's Office, which could delay the release schedule for December 6th of this year. French law stipulates that the appeal process could take up to 2 months, which would force Abdullah to remain in prison until at least early 2025. Expected to spend this appeal period in Lens-Messan prison, which creates uncertainty about his situation. And in Senegal, a government spokesman said that the government party, Senegal African Patriots for Work, Ethics and Fraternity, won a wide victory in the legislative elections held in the African country. On Sunday, more than 7 million voters were called to the polls to elect 165 parliamentarians for the next 5 years. The spokesman in charge of the announcement, Amadou Mustafa Djiksare, based his statement on the counting of 90% of the votes. According to local media, PASTEF won 29 seats on the national proportional list and 90 on the departmental majority list, giving it an absolute majority in the legislature and consolidating its position in strategic strongholds such as Dakar, Tibawane, and Linguère. In South Sudan, the Ministry of Health is on alert for a possible cholera outbreak. According to the organization Doctors Without Borders, the conditions for a cholera outbreak are in sight following the continuous arrival of numerous refugees from neighboring Sudan and the precarious situation in the settlements of workforce migrants. The non-governmental organization reported in a statement that the increase of cases in the towns of Renk and Malakal in Upper Nile State, about 520 kilometers north of Juba, the capital city, where thousands of Sudanese fleeing armed conflict are sheltered. Specialists warn that the current situation worsens the conditions to sanitize the outbreaks of the epidemic in Upper Nile State, so it called for an immediate vaccination campaign. And California health officials confirmed the first case of the most aggressive strain of Mpox in the United States. Patient zero recently traveled to East Africa, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Laboratory tests revealed that the person was infected with the strain 1 of Mpox. Strain 1 has caused death and more severe symptoms than strain 2, which was primarily responsible for the global outbreak that occurred in 2022. According to local media, strain 2 caused 32,000 infections and 58 deaths in the U.S. Now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden authorized Ukraine to use Washington's supply long-range missiles to attack Russian territory. Media reports indicate that the long-range missiles authorized by Biden are likely to be used first against Russian troops in Kursk province, the scene of a massive incursion by the Kiev regime into Russia's border territory. In this context, the British Royal Air Force reported that the United Kingdom and France also approved the use of Storm Shadow Scalp missiles with a range of up to 560 kilometers. For this part, Moscow has repeatedly warned that the Western policy of supplying weapons to Ukraine does not contribute to the Russian-Ukrainian negotiations and will only have negative effect on the current conflict. In response, the Russian government recalled that President Vladimir Putin has spoken out on previous occasions, reiterating the consequences for the West of allowing an attack on Russia. In September, the Russian president stated that if a decision was made to allow Ukraine to attack Russia with long-range weapons, it would mean a war initiated by NATO. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova recalled that President Putin has already made a statement on this issue and on the consequences for the West. In this context, Putin has informed that with a view to changing the nature of the conflict, the appropriate decision will be taken according to the threats posed. And the Russian Ministry of Defense reported this November 18th that 59 Ukrainian attack drones were shot down on the day in various regions of the southwestern part of the country. According to the report, of these unmanned aerial vehicles, 45 were intercepted in the Bryansk region, 6 in Kursk, 3 in Belgorod, 3 in Tula, and 2 in Moscow. Last month, the United Kingdom and Netherlands NATO members had promised to deliver new batches of drones to Ukraine. In recent months, Kiev's drone attacks on oil refineries and fuel depots in Russia have also intensified. In Belize, tropical storm Sarah made landfall, causing heavy rains and flooding in several locations in the country. According to the United States National Hurricane Center, the storm weakened as it passed through the Central American country and will reach Guatemala and southern Mexico as a tropical depression after having left floods in Honduras, 1 dead and more than 70,000 affected. So far, no casualties have been reported in Belize. However, authorities warned in their latest report that rivers have increased their flow and heavy rains have caused flooding in several areas of the country. Maximum sustained winds are near 55 km per hour with stronger gusts. Further weakening is expected until it becomes a throw over the southern portion of the Yucatan Peninsula. And on Monday, a line of storms favored by Tropical Depression Sarah affects El Salvador with abundant humidity coming from the Pacific Ocean. The storms enter through the coast of Sonsonate and Aguachapan in the southwest of the country and move through the northeast of the country, where they will cause damage in the next few days. So far, as a result of the heavy rains of the last hours, a house collapsed in the coastal area at the same time that military and firefighters removed trees and debris while supporting the evacuation of 7 civilians. The Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources forecasts that due to the influence of the drag of humidity from Tropical Depression Sarah from the Pacific Ocean, the rains will continue until the first days of this week. And in Ecuador, the National Risk Management Secretariat reported that forest fires continue in the south of the country. National authorities reported that the fires have consumed more than 3,783 hectares in the province of Loja and have affected 88 hectares of primary forest in the Podocarpus National Park. Meanwhile, to contain the advance of the flames, rescue brigades from other cities have joined in addition to 4 helicopters equipped with Bambi buckets, 2 of them belonging to the Peruvian Air Force. In this regard, the Risk Management Agency recommended citizens to use face masks due to air pollution from the flames. And in India, New Delhi done with a severe level of pollution, forcing its government to implement extreme emergency measures such as the suspension of classes and industrial activities. From daybreak, fog reduced visibility to minimum, causing flight cancellations and delays at railway stations. The air quality index in the Indian capital stood at 485, a reading classified as severe plus, and which has serious health implications. Authorities have therefore launched from today Stage 4 of an anti-pollution plan, the strictest of the national protocol, which limits commercial and industrial activities, established online classes, and teleworking to avoid exposure. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Uruguay, presidential candidates participated in the debate prior to the presidential runoff next Sunday, November 24th. The debate between the Frente Amplio candidate, Yamandu Orsi, and the representative of the Partido Nacional, Álvaro Delgado, lasted 90 minutes. According to the information, the contest was broadcasted on radio and television and was divided into 3 blocks. During the event, the candidates discussed topics related to human development, housing, health, sports, culture, disability, security, education, and labor. According to the latest polls, the broad front candidate has an advantage of between 2 and 4 percentage points in voting preference among Uruguayan citizens.
I thank all those who have participated in this electoral campaign and are making this celebration of democracy a reality once again, as it has been celebrated uninterruptedly in our country for 40 years. I am Yamandu Orsi. I grew up in a neighborhood of an inland city. I went to public school in my neighborhood. I went to high school. I was a teacher in the last years. I had the responsibility of leading, of governing Canelones.
In Uruguay, the candidate for the broad front, Yamandu Orsi, participated in the debate prior to the presidential elections, highlighting that citizens will soon have the opportunity to choose for a better quality of life.
Next Sunday we will have to choose. We will have to choose between 2 options, that of a stagnant country, that of unfulfilled promises, or that of a safe change that will not be radical and that implies the welfare of our people, that implies that we can all make ends meet, that implies that salaries go up, that implies that pensions yield, that implies that we live in an increasingly fairer country. The sure change that we propose is that change where we can all live in peace and walk our streets in peace, where we all feel much safer.
For his part, the candidate for the National Party, Álvaro Delgado, participated in a presidential debate a few days before the elections in the country, where he commented that housing solutions are only an intervention by making a floor and do not qualify as a dwelling.
Housing solutions sometimes are simply an intervention to build an apartment. Pablo Barto is building them a decent apartment, and the truth is that he has solved many precarious situations. Yamandu raises the issue of Serenio. We went to his foundation and accompanied a large part of this process, but also the state has to play strongly.
In Ecuador, the Minister of Environment, Water and Ecological Transition, Inés Manzano, informed that the country will reduce daily power outages from 12 to 8 hours after Colombia began selling energy to the nation on Sunday. The minister highlighted that thanks to the recovery of 65% of the Colombian reservoirs, 420 megawatts had been acquired on this first day, although the transmission grid to Ecuador has a limit of 450 megawatts. In this context, Manzano explained that rainfalls are expected on November 19th and the 21st in the basin of the Cocacoro-Sinclair hydroelectric plant, which will allow lowering the time slots of service disruptions. According to the minister, in December, the time slots could be further reduced depending on weather conditions. U.S. President Joe Biden landed on Sunday in Rio de Janeiro to participate in the G20 summit. Biden arrived accompanied by the Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The head of state announced that the U.S. will raise to $100 million its contribution to the Amazon Fund, an initiative promoted by Lula da Silva. This amount is less than the $500 million committed in 2023 by Washington over 5 years. The event will focus on the fight against the climate crisis and the conservation of the biodiversity of the natural treasures. In total, delegations from 42 countries will be present at the summit, according to Brazilian President Luiz Inácio da Silva. And in Peru, judicial authorities evaluate requests for preventive imprisonment against President Dina Boluarte's brother and others implicated in the case called Los Huaquis en la Sombra. Judge Richard Concepcion Carrancho began the evaluation of the prosecutor's request to impose 36 months of preventive detention against Nicanor Boluarte, brother of President Dina Boluarte, as well as Mateo Castañeda, ex-lawyer of the head of state and others involved in the case called Los Huaquis en la Sombra. In this context, the former advisor of President Boluarte delivered to the public ministry a series of audios revealing the payment of bribes for the positions of prefects and sub-prefects in Los Huaquis en la Sombra, an alleged network of influence trafficking. In Argentina, Cristina Fernández led her first act as president of the Justicialist Party, in which she defended the role of the state in the midst of the neoliberal onslaught carried out by Javier Milei's government. In the city of Santiago del Estero, the former president addressed thousands of supporters on the occasion of the Peronist Militancy Day. It was the first appearance of the conviction against her by the Cassation Chamber in the Vialidad case, which will be appealed in the Supreme Court. During her speech, Cristina Fernández affirmed that they are trying to ban her and highlighted the achievements of her government. At the same time, she summoned other political forces to face the adjustment policies promoted by Milei's administration. And the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, this November 17th, closed the Congress of the historic bloc with proposals summarizing the plan of the homeland that will give way to the new communal state and the development of the country. These proposals mark the beginning of his new government that starts on January 10th. According to the Vice President of Planning, Ricardo Menendez, in these meetings, 1,052 interventions were carried out. At the same time, 1,634 proposals were made in the national discussion stage, while more than 500,000 proposals were compiled in public consultation exercises. In this context, President Maduro insisted that no one can think that everything is already done. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.